Hello everyone, and welcome to the official release for my brand new book and the newest prequel chapter in the Allen and Wonderland universe, Wonderhaven. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys and tell you that I am a pretty big bowl of mixed emotions right now. First and foremost, I am over the moon excited for this, but I'm also quite terribly nervous about it because I'm really the only one that has any sort of knowledge pertaining to this book. My wife hasn't read it yet, which is quite abnormal for her. No one else in my family has read it. And my best friend doesn't even know what's going on with it. So I guess what that really means is that if you are here right now watching this video, you are my launch audience. Essentially, you are the very first in line to experience this story. So I guess some congratulations are in order for that. But what I really want to do, as always, is just express to you my gratitude for not only being able to do this and share my work with you in this format, but I guess just in general express gratitude for the ability of us coming together to really celebrate this release of this newest project. I hope it's something that you enjoy individually, and I hope it's something that you can share with all your loved ones and really as many people as possible. But yeah, I guess without further ado, let's kick this bad boy off with a note from me, the author. So, I'll admit, I'm probably not the best choice for a narrator, but since Alan isn't here this time, I'll have to do. When I first started this series, there was no way of knowing where it would lead. I was just a high school kid with an idea for a psychological twist on a classic, and was very nervous that no one would like it. As things went further, though, I began to see the potential in building a timeline, using lore to really make Wonderland my own. This is the next chapter of that. It's also my way of answering some of my own curiosities about it. Like, if Wonderland does indeed exist without Alice, what did it look like before she and her kin came into the picture? Or, if it's the result of trauma as suggested, how would the events of a prequel be reflected in her damaged psyche? I'm sure you think that, as its creator, I know all of the secrets that wait around every corner, but I assure you, many details about this world are still remain undiscovered, and the ones we know may not be exactly as they appear. So here we are, together once more, searching, listening to a tale that begins on a night as mysterious as it is curious, a night that would set off a chain reaction linking Alice to Alan and Wonderland to its previously determined fate. You see, chronologically, this is where the little saga begins. But I hope you will come to realize this is also where it ends. Everything in between is left for you to witness. Chapter 1. By the Light of the Bandersnatch's Eye. White darling, come away from there now. It's time for bed, the Queen insisted gently, attempting to pry the young princess from the window. Oh, but mother, The moon is so wonderfully full tonight, and as bright as the Bandersnatch, and as bright as a Bandersnatch's eye," she informed, inching away slowly, so as not to directly disobey her mother's request, but not break her gaze either. "Ugh," Red snarled from across the room, standing in front of a looking-glass while brushing the day's braids out of her long ruby hair. "I'll never understand why you obsess over such foolish things. That moon was there last night, and that moon was the same as the night before. It changes faces, but it doesn't ever change being just a moon." "It is not just," White combated while being corralled under the covers. The king, who was slouched in a chair in the corner of the room closest to the door, found a sort of fatherish humor in the bickering, but interrupted to resolve it with a chuckle. "Come now, Red," taking an interest in the simple beauties as well as the intricacies of her kingdom that would otherwise go unnoticed and unappreciated, is an important quality for a future queen to have. "I think an even more important quality to have is obedience," she hissed, situating herself in her own bed. "She'll need that to be of any value as a handmaiden when I'm queen. Oh, but don't worry, little sister. There will be plenty of time to gawk at the moon while you wait to be called upon to serve me." "That's enough," the king scolded. "And since you insist on being so rude to your sister, you mustn't mind if she chooses the story for tonight, then." "Ugh. Again?" she whined with disgust. "Yes, again," the queen affirmed, as she tucked White in properly before turning to her. "So what will it be?" She allowed no time for consideration, consultation, or procrastination before submitting her selection. "The Futurum Resistus and the Book of Prophecies." "Again?" the queen asked, trying to dissuade her. "Yes, again," she mimicked with a giggle. "That'll make this the third night in a row," her mother reminded. "Wouldn't you rather hear something else? What about how the Bandersnatch got its name?" "Actually, dear, I'd quite like to hear that one," the king interjected again. "It's always been a personal favorite of the stories you tell, and I can't remember the last time I heard it." "Very well," she sighed, casting him a loving smile as she stood between the beds. She had repeated the story so many times she almost nervously cleared her throat, feeling pressured to think of ways to keep it fresh and engaging. Our oldest texts teach us that Wonderland was created by the powerful magic of a divine race of beings referred to as the Dios Grigio, or the Grey Gods. So too, we were created as a companion to care for it and make it our home. When the work was done, and they looked down on their children from their ethereal perch, the Dios Grigio decided amongst themselves that they wouldn't meddle in our affairs. They wouldn't make their physical presence known to our world unless it was to ascend their chosen into their pantheon. But, seeing as we're not all-knowing like our fathers, they saw that some kind of guidance was needed. So, they delivered unto us the Futurum Resistus, or Future Bringer, as a reminder of their existence. According to legend, it's a great heavenly golden bird whose beard is full of the wisdom of its masters. Its wings are said to span the length of the sky, and its tail is long enough to grab the stars and pull them across the night. The wisest of our people were the first and only to be visited, many of their lifetimes across the generations. were spent trying to decipher the ancient language the messenger's words were written in. Once they were proficient, they fashioned a book to record the translations and realized they were, in fact, prophecies of our future according to the will of the Grey Ones. This means that what is written must come to pass, and it's up to us to decide how it's best handled. But once it does, it becomes part of our histories. They passed down the ability to translate the messages so the prophecies would never be lost to us. Didn't they, Mother? White added cheerfully, finishing the thought. Well, look who's been paying attention after all, the Queen acknowledged rewardingly. But tell us how the bishop does it. I never get tired of that part. Red grinned, pushing the story along. The Queen gave a concerned look to their father, hoping for permission to skip over this, but he only responded with a nod to press on. They say that a single feather can contain a century's worth of events. We never know when they will happen, but we must trust that they will. The bishop plucks a feather, which is covered in fine barbs that cut him. When the ink seeps into the wound, and he places his palm on the book, a bloody mixture pours out, and the blank page is filled with depictions of a prophecy that he translates and shares with your father and I. Meanwhile, the bishop was bandaging an inky wound in his hand, but his behavior was odd as he emerged from his dungeon library. The typically stoic, elderly teacher was quite frantic, thinking out loud, practically shouting. It was clear that whatever thoughts he was having were darting in and out of his mind before he could fully process them, causing panic. The only things louder were the footsteps that echoed off the castle walls as he flew down the hallways in search of help. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Weak but rapid knocks came from the door to the princess's bedroom, leaving the king to answer. Before he could swing it open completely, the bishop started addressing him, fighting to catch his breath. 1,000 apologies for disturbing your privacy, your majesty. Nonsense, the king dismissed, noticing his distress. What is it? There's been a new prophecy that needs your attention immediately, he panted, using his healing hand to hold himself up against the door. The Queen's too, if she will. Of course, Bishop, she complied respectfully. Is the messenger still here? White asked, optimistically, sitting up in bed behind her. Can I? Her mother spun around, quickly crushing the excitement that was welling up inside. Stay put, both of you. I expect you to be fast asleep by the time I return. The bishop retraced the steps to his dwelling with the same vigor in which they were made. However, doing so with minimal rest for his aging body would see a worsening of his condition, forcing him to rely heavily on a table to the side of his room to support his weight as he grew too fatigued to stand. He knew the royalty's eyes were watching him closely, so, not wanting them to pay him too much mind, he motioned to the book that lay open beside him. The prophecy, please. He took the time the couple spent analyzing the contents of its pages to regain his strength and straighten himself up, just in time to see wide eyes in the Queen's jaw fall open as she indirectly gasped to her husband. Does this mean? The king's jaw was clenched, with visibly numbing disbelief, as he finished. He's making his move. Are you sure this is correct? She asked, looking up from the book at the bishop. I'm afraid it is. I made certain of it before I came to you, the old man responded. What are your orders, my lord? After a short pause to look at one another, as though they were sharing a thought, she suggested, as we planned. The vague question was met with an equally vague nod of approval that left the bishop puzzled. I beg your pardon, my lady? The king was the one who clarified. You'll come with me, bishop. We have much to discuss and even more to do. Things were now progressing faster than the bishop could understand, but he agreed to follow blindly. What would you ask of me, my king? Questioned the queen as the group wasted little time in separating. This news needs to be brought before the council, he answered. Send the Bandersnatches to fetch the Duchess and my brother. Shall I inform the rabbit? She asked, backing her way toward the exit. No, he'll learn of this at the meeting like everyone else, he replied. For now, just make sure he stays with the girls. Despite all the commotion over the past few moments, the throne room stayed silent and dark, the perfect conditions for the queen's sleeping pets, the only pack of their kind to be tamed in the entire kingdom. 4 Bandersnatches lay chained to the wall nearest her throne. As for how they managed this, no one could say for sure, but there have been many versions of the same story told about the day she went for a walk in the wilderness shortly after she and the king were married. The most commonly spoken is that the soldiers that accompanied her cried of an attack, provoking her husband, who then demanded the creatures be hunted down in her defense. She stayed his blade, pleading that they were only doing as their instincts told them, and they shouldn't be punished. In sparing their lives, she invited them into her home, the whole ordeal leading to her forming an attachment. Over time, it became an unnatural, unbreakable, and unbelievable bond, built not on the premise of one controlling the other, but rather a deep understanding and respect. Hearing her enter the room, and seeing her face highlighted in the alternating hues of their bioluminescence, all but one lifted their massive heads to yawn a greeting. When the queen passed by without showing affection, they realized it was serious. A twitch of a finger freed the 2 she needed, who dutifully tailed her to the doors. Try as she may, she wasn't able to hide her anxiousness from her companions, letting an uneasy sigh slip into the moonlight. Sensing a need for comfort, one of them nudged her arm until she threw it around its neck, tightly. To it she whispered to the Duchess, and to the black royalty to the other. Go now and be swift. Sprinting from their starting positions, the Bandersnatches took monstrous strides, working up to galloping speeds. The queen stepped out of the doorway to maintain sight of them a second longer before they cloaked themselves and bounded through the wilderness. On her way back in, she stopped to look at the moon, and it occurred to her that in all her years, all her time as co-ruler of Wonderland, she never truly looked at it, never genuinely appreciated it the way her daughter had, without failure every time it rose. How bittersweet to start now, given the circumstances. We're going to cut this video here, guys. I figured, this first episode is going to serve as kind of an introduction to the whole book. And so I really just kind of wanted it to serve as sort of an appetite whetter, in the hopes that you like what you heard and you come back for the next episodes. I think the plan is definitely going to alternate between 1 to 2 chapters per video on the norm, probably depending on, the size of the chapter and kind of the rhythm I get into reading them. If I feel comfortable trying to fit in a second chapter within a decent amount of time, I certainly will. But for now, I think this is a pretty good place to cut this first video. And so I hope to see you back here for the next episode as we continue. Until then, we'll see you next time.